Mr. Hearing Examiner, according to
Yes.
the witness schedule, I believe that I'm the next.
Yes, I understand. The commissioner can exercise his prerogative to go. It's fine. Um,
That's fine. If there are more, if there are other parties who'd
all
like
right,
to.
stop. Oh, that's the. Okay, let's solve one problem at a time. Let's stop, everyone. And first, we're going to solve the YouTube issue because we are not being broadcast live at present. So, to the extent to which the commission wishes to ensure that its links are actually working, we need to do that. And that falls sadly to me as the only person who's doing the technology in this entire proceeding. And I have to email our entire IT department and provide them the link that goes to YouTube so that they can make sure that it's up there.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I've been informed from Mr. Tupler that he says it's back on.
Okay, then they don't have to change the link, in which case we're done with that. Now, so as far as we're aware, it's up and working. Mr. Baker, the commission works like this. The hearing examiner and commissioners engage in examination. We do not engage in cross-examination. There is a meaningful distinction between those two things. Commissioner Ellison and myself are at no time cross-examining. Your cross-examination is subordinate to our desire to make the record we feel necessary to resolve this for the public interest. If Commissioner Ellison would like to chime in and ask some questions, that is completely appropriate to do so. Commissioner Ellison, would you like to?
I'm fine to wait to the end. I just wanted to say I did have some questions of Mr. Warner before we move on to the next witness.
Oh, sure. And we're going to likely have Mr. Warner back tomorrow morning. Mr. Warner is not done with the day. So if you'd like, Commissioner Ellison, we can also, I mean, my plan was to go tomorrow morning. And if you'd like to do the same, we can do that.
I have a 8:30 to 9:30 commitment is tomorrow morning is my main constraint.
Okay, well then let's just have Commissioner Ellison's questions now, and then to the extent to which we'll have to bring witness Warner back during these proceedings, we'll just deal with that. So Commissioner Ellison, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, just a question. How late are we going this evening? Is there any planned cutoff?
Yeah, for the benefit of our court reporter, we try not to go over. If we go 15 minutes over, Mr. Lee, is that acceptable to you, sir?
Yes, sir.
So if we can go for another 25 minutes, Commissioner Ellison, is that going to work?
Sure, I'll do what I can.
And if we have to have witness Warner come back because your schedule doesn't allow you to be here tomorrow morning, that can be done as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, Mr. Warner. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. One question, I guess there have been a number of questions about these 16 feeders that are at or above capacity with the customer's solar connections. Could you please describe what upgrades are necessary to these feeders if we want more customer solar to be interconnected on them?
Yeah, so the way that we see it is there's a number of investments and they come in a layer. So one of the first things is going to be the planning investment. And that really just allows us to, we talked about it earlier, but we'll be able to analyze a distribution feeder at locational hosting capacity. Okay. And I want to maybe be clear about this. The feeders that we've labeled at solar saturation today are all at solar saturation because the interconnected solar is greater than the feeder rating. And traditionally, a feeder has a 10 megawatt rating. That means that we have more than 10 megawatts of solar interconnected to the distribution feeder. Every one of those circuits has large installations of solar on them today. And when I say large, greater than 5 megawatts. In many cases, it's like an 8 to a 10 megawatt solar site installed to them. Now, I want to say that I think that's a benefit, though, because now we're starting to learn how to balance generation and load on the feeder. And that's really what we're trying to solve with the grid modernization. It's like, how do we real-time manage the energy on those feeders. Okay, so investments needed. One is the planning. The other is the integrated volt VAR, so we can control the voltage on the feeder. And then the other thing we're proposing is we need a form of energy storage on those circuits as well. Okay, and we believe that's a much more elegant solution than curtailing the solar or building additional distribution feeders, because that would be an alternative, but we don't feel like that's the best alternative.
And so the issue on those feeders is not the relay protection. It's not the backfeed issue. It's purely the physical capacity of the feeder to handle that much power.
It is. That's correct. It's not like a protective relay. We have reverse power on those feeders today, on many of those circuits. So. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So does this current grid mod application include these feeder upgrades? Does the grid mod itself include the volt VAR, the energy storage that would be necessary for expanding that capacity?
It would. What I would tell you is the grid mod plan, we would deploy the DA technologies. So that's the reclosers, the sectionalizers, so we can actually sectionalize the feeder. We would deploy those technologies, and then we would deploy the integrated volt VAR on those circuits. Those would be some of the first circuits we would deploy on. Now, I want to be clear, and I'm going to tie this in and hopefully maybe try to make a little bit of clarity. The 12 megawatts that we're proposing in our rate case that we will then bring forward in another filing application, which we believe has to go through a CCN process. That's the reason why it sits in another filing. It's 12 megawatts for 2 of the feeders. Okay, so we're going to start with 2 of the feeders. We want to prove and test. You get data, you analyze, and then we anticipate we're going to be coming back with additional energy storage to address other feeders as well. So when you talk about the full 16, we have 2 of them that we're going to address first. I'm giving you a precursor, and I apologize for that. And then we would need to bring other energy storage filing for additional feeders.
Given that these feeders are at their physical constraints for carrying power, would AMI to customers along these feeders help in any way to integrate additional amounts of solar?
It very well may. So, and the way I'll describe that is when we have AMI on those distribution feeders, that's what's going to inform our distribution planning. So then we can start doing like locational hosting capacity analysis, right? So, and I'm talking specifically from a distribution modeling perspective. When we can inform our model more accurate because we have data, integrated data across our entire feeder, what we may find is there may be parts of the feeder today that we could interconnect to. Again, this goes back to when we close the circuit, we're closing it because of like one analysis and we don't have the granular data on the distribution feeder. The AMI will start informing like what's occurring on each individual part of the circuit. Is that what your question was?
So I guess what you're saying then is that, you would do this distribution automation so that you could better sectionalize the feeder, but you're saying that's not enough, that you would need some additional data to understand the hosting capacity of each individual section.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, how much more solar capacity could you add to those feeders just with the AMI data and without doing the distribution automation? It sounds like it might be fairly limited.
It's like I can't quantify exactly, but because we've made no upgrades or changes to the system, it's more like just we may identify certain areas, which is going to be very limited in the benefit that it would bring.
Okay. I guess the downtown network that you've discussed, adding AMI to that downtown network would not facilitate the connection of PV to that network. Is that correct?
It doesn't increase the capability. And I mean, this is like, that's a whole topic. We could like just dive into just that topic of the downtown. But the limitation of the downtown is really the inability to connect distribution energy resources that would potentially backfeed. So we can interconnect solar, but we have to size it such that it does not backfeed onto the system.
Okay. Would you agree that in general, AMI gives you more visibility into the operating condition of the distribution the distribution system, but it cannot take the place of feeder level upgrades in integrating more customer PV?
That's a very fair characterization. I would agree with that.
Would the AMI deployment make the feeder upgrades any cheaper?
It possibly could, because now you have better information to inform your designs. So I from an aspect of like better data produces better results, right? Does that make sense?
I'm just trying to get a feeling if that can be quantified somehow, how much cheaper might the feeder upgrades become if this AMI data were available?
I want to be clear. When you talk about feeder upgrades, are you talking about core investments to replace aging infrastructure, or?
I guess I'm mainly talking about investments that would allow additional customer solar to be put on those feeders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you describe that, I guess what my mind goes to is like corrective actions or additional technologies or investments you may have to deploy on top of. So as you have better data, then we'll be able to deploy better solutions.
Right. In the application, PNM has claimed that the widespread AMI deployment would yield an improvement in distribution reliability. Am I understanding that correctly?
You are. Mm-hmm.
Could you please describe how that improvement would take place? If we look at AMI alone, how would that help improve distribution reliability?
Sure. I can point to recent events. So we recently had a storm event in New Mexico in the Albuquerque area that was actually widespread across all the PNM service territory. And today, let's understand kind of how outages are reported and how we address them. So when the outages occurred, we're dependent upon customers calling or texting PNM to tell us that there's an outage somewhere, right? And so you can imagine our distribution operations center was flooded with outage information. And so now what we do in our models is we try to associate it with the highest protected device that might trip or take those customers out of service. And then we deploy our crews to go address at that location. And when they do, they might restore a circuit because our modeling was telling us the outage was the entire circuit. We restore the circuit only to find out later that we missed a customer that was downstream that lost service. And if we had AMI information, we would actually know which customers, when we restore the circuit, were still not in service. And we could deploy the crews to work on them. So it actually, and the simplest way for me to describe this is it actually helps us deploy our crews more efficiently to address outages, because now we have the data to know where the outages are at and which customers need to be restored. That's in the simplest form.
So in terms of SAIDI and SAIFI, it sounds like the AMI deployment would help reduce the duration of outages, but not the frequency of outages. Is that a fair characterization?
And before you
I-
answer, sir, let me for court reporters' benefit, that's SAIDI and SAIFI. Go ahead, Mr. Warner.
Yeah, this is a really good one because we dove into this a little bit, just trying to determine like cause and effects. What we've seen is some utilities, SAIDIs, get worse initially when they deploy AMI. And the concept is just really this. When we have AMI, now we have data and visibility to the system. We have I'm going to say a true SAIDI and SAIFI measurement. Once you know a true measurement, now we can talk about improvements from that measurement. And I'm not saying that what we report today is untruthful. It's based off of the best available data that we have to us today, right? That's the models. Those are the programs we have. So will we see improvement? I can't tell you that we're going to see an improvement initially. What I would tell you is we're going to have real numbers. And now when we have real numbers, we're going to be able to report and actually deploy our crews more efficiently. So should there be improvements just because of the efficiency of it? There's going to be some small measurable of improvement there.
I understand the data issue, but let's assume that we're starting from today's baseline. We may not know the exact number, but let's just say today's SAIDI and SAIFI baseline. So, my question is, would AMI deployment really only impact the duration of outages and not the frequency of outages?
It wouldn't, it doesn't change the effect or what's causing, when you talk about the frequency of what's causing the outage, it doesn't change the cause.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I misunderstood that. Sorry
Yes,
about
that was my question.
Sorry about that.
Can you, I think Commissioner O'Connell might have asked this, can you quantify the reliability improvement that you would anticipate from, I guess, both the AMI deployment as well as the other distribution automation investments that you have laid out here?
We haven't quantified them as far as like a future forecast, if that's what you're asking.
Right. I mean, could you do that?
If we were to do it today, it would be purely speculative because we don't actually have the data to so anything we would create would be based off of assumptions.
I see. I guess I was under the impression from this application that P&M believes that the reliability improvement is an important aspect of this whole proposed project. Would you be willing to commit to specific minimum reliability standards that reflect an improvement over today's standards?
Yeah, I think we've offered in our how do I want to say this? But in our stakeholder in building metrics, we've offered to meet with stakeholders, including the commission and staff, to say what are the right metrics, and do we want to build some form of, is there like a measurement of improvement by feeder? I think that was actually one of the discovery questions we received as well. We could report out on feeder performance at a feeder level as well.
Because obviously, we have a very clear idea of what the cost increase is going to be, but right now we have a fairly poor idea of what the results are going to be. And I understand that some of these things are hard to quantify monetarily, but it seems to me that it's possible to quantify the benefits in some form or fashion. I guess another something that I thought was interesting in the application, is there a difference in reliability between low income areas and higher income areas in your service territory?
The way I would describe that, and I think I talked a little bit about it in my testimony, is our system ages, and as it ages, there's a potential for like equipment failing out and having poor reliability on parts of our system. Okay. Some of those areas we've actually mapped, and you can see that they're associated with poor areas of the community. I don't know that that's always a direct correlation, but those are like layers that we can look at because we have reliability by feeder and we have demographics of our service area.
So if we, let's take a couple of neighborhoods that both have underground distribution. So you're saying that the equipment in general in the lower income areas may well be older, and therefore there is a higher rate of interruption, or the reliability is worse?
It may. The best thing to do is like literally we can turn on those layers in our mapping and analyze feeder reliability against demographics of the area. That's actually what we're proposing to do in our environmental justice screening process, is look at feeder performance and the demographics of our community to select the areas that would benefit most. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. So if the issue is older equipment in these low income areas, then instead of prioritizing AMI deployment, isn't the real solution here to allocate more of your regular distribution network investments to those areas, so that you're replacing those older cables or older transformers on a maybe you're prioritizing your investments so that you're making up for the lower performance?
That's exactly what we are doing. So in the testimony that's in Wes Gray's rate case testimony, when he refers to our aging infrastructure, that's exactly where we're prioritizing. So we look at the poor performing circuits, and those are the circuits we're rebuilding.
In your view, which is lower cost, grid scale solar or distributed solar?
I think there's a place for both. And you have to kind of look at the benefits of both of them. And I believe our system will be made up of grid scale connected to the transmission, as well as distribution. And I will tell you, and this is getting a little bit into it, but the transmission interconnected solar, one of the hard things that we've been working through is how do you interconnect them timely and quickly. So there will be community solar installations. We have a community solar bill. Those will be connected at the distribution. So the time to interconnect is much quicker.
How does this particular plan facilitate a carbon-free grid?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in a couple ways. One is we believe that the distribution system and distribution energy resources is part of the carbon-free plan. It's not the whole plan. So there needs to be utility scale resources interconnected, but that's customer or distribution energy resources connected at the distribution level as well. And it's really kind of marrying both of those together to get to a true carbon-free grid. We believe you can't do one without the other. It's maximizing both of those.
Would you characterize that objective of facilitating a carbon-free grid as the primary objective of your grid modernization application?
I don't know if I would say it's the primary, but that is a North Star that New Mexico, all utilities and citizens are working towards. And so is that one of the drivers? I do believe it is one of the drivers.
If you had to choose between distribution automation and AMI, which would you choose?
Luckily, I don't have to choose, do I?
Well, there may be only a certain amount of money here, so
Yeah. How do you get there, right? Boy, you're putting me in a rock and a hard place. So I'm the distribution guy.
Sorry about that.
I'm the distribution guy. I want all the distribution because then I can advance the distribution system. So I do believe they complement each other, you know. And so I don't know how else to express it other than they really are complements to each other.
Okay. But it seems to be clear to more integrate more distributed energy resources. It seems like it would be the distribution automation front.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I guess I'm almost out of time here. You know, on this cost benefit, which has come up several times today, you know, I guess my concern here is that, you know, whatever is labeled core grid modernization is presumed to be necessary. You know, you could give us $1 billion plan and call it core grid mod, and supposedly we can't question it. Is that your position?
No, I don't think that's my position at all. It is not. So I want to be maybe clear what we were characterizing. So, and I'll go to that exhibit that's in my testimony, figure OBW. We've referenced it a few times. It shows the chevron, right? Those are the core investments to start. And when they run beyond, that means that we haven't deployed them across the entire system. So it's really saying, here's the core investments we need to start with. And there's another exhibit that would probably be beneficial for this discussion. So when we go to, I think it's LES3, it was Laura sponsored this one. And it's the Internex study that we did with Internex. Let me turn there just because I think this is very beneficial to understand. Let me get there. This is one of the exercises we actually went through. And I'm going to go to page 6 of that LES3. There's a figure 5 right there.
I'm not sure. I know which exhibit is LES3.
I'll pull it up in a second. It's page 6 of LES3. Is that what you said?
It is. There's a figure 5, P&M current state self-assessment.
Wait, this is LES-3, page 5 of 18.
It should be page 6.
Page 6 of.
I think perhaps Mr. Warner is pointing to LES2.
Oh,
Are you
LES2. I'm
referring-
sorry. Thank you.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
LES2 and then LES2 and then page which?
Page 6.
It's also labeled page 9 of 40.
Okay. Is that the one?
There, yeah, figure 5. Oh, there we go.
Is this it?
That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That helps me.
Okay, so this figure comes right out of the DOE roadmap, volume 4. And when I say that, there's a base technologies, and this is how the technologies are kind of stacked for grid modernization. What we did, the exercise we went through with Internex, was to assess what technologies did we need to deploy on our distribution system and what maturity did we have on the current investment or the technology. And if you see, and I'm going to start from the bottom up. So black font, they're not in scope. They're investments that are not part of our grid modernization plan. And what we're saying is maybe someday in the future, we determine we need to bring those. And specifically, you can look at anything that's spelled out in black. Okay. So red font is anticipated investments for the second half of our 10-year plan. Again, we're not asking for those plans. We just tried to build a 10-year roadmap, and those are investments that we would need sometime into the future. Orange are enhancements to existing systems or technologies requested in the PNM application, our grid mod application. Okay, so all items in orange. Green are investments requested in the PNM application. So those are new investments we don't have today. And then the shading represents the maturity level. So the more shaded, the more mature we are today. That's our own maturity within PNM. If there isn't any shading, then that kind of indicates that we haven't started on any of those investments. It would be new to us.
Right, I understand. Well, I think I'm out of time today, but I certainly appreciate your answering my questions.
Yeah, thank you.
So Commissioner Ellison, would you like to, do you want to come back tomorrow and start with, but you have time between 9 and 9:30, or should we have plan on Mr. Warner coming back at some point?
Can I get back to you with that? I've just got a meeting between 8:30 and 9:30 that I need to attend. But
oh, sorry, I thought I confused that. So the other thing is we can 8:30 and 9:30. Would you be available at 9:30 tomorrow morning?
Yes, and I'll think about it. If I have any additional questions, I may not, but I'll come back on at 9:30 just in case.
Very good. Okay, yeah, we've gone a bit over here. That's fine though. We'll pick back up tomorrow. Mr. Baker, you'll have your opportunity to question. And Mr. Welliger, you have a question?
Yeah, just to clarify your request to, in a succinct format, sort of summarize the rate case investments that affect or inform grid mod or relate to grid mod. That will be Mr. Warner who is going to sponsor that. I presume that you want that in the form of a testimony or an affidavit. Is that right?
If it's more easily displayed in table form,
Okay.
oftentimes those speak a lot more than several pages of testimony. I think our purpose is purely just to get clear what are these physical grid infrastructure investments that we're talking about that exist in the background that Mr. Warner keeps pointing to, because it makes me uncomfortable to not have certainty about that while simultaneously talking about these complementary investments. We need to know it all. And so I don't want you guys to regurgitate what's in the rate case, but provide to us, what is underlying all of these add-on things that we're talking about in this case. Does that make sense?
Yes, you want the investments plus the cost outlined in a table.
Yeah, and that would be very useful too. And Mr. Gedko asked this question. I can probably go into the rate materials and find out, I'm aware that it's 116 or whatever for the grid mod rider, and then it jumps to 5. I don't know what you can provide in terms of projections as to the rate case. I'm assuming that information's in there. I don't think it'd be too hard for you all just to say, here's the kind of distribution investment costs we're looking at too, to give the ratepayer a full sense of, here's the bill you're looking at.
I'm not sure I understood your second follow-up. I didn't.
Mr. Warner, did you understand what I was talking about right there?
I think we can produce what you're asking for. So
Basically,
I have a picture in my head. If it's not fully answering it, then please reach back out to us.
No, that's fine. And again, I'm just trying to get the total cost of the investments that you're talking about, Mr. Warner, and what is the ratepayer really looking at for these distribution upgrades, whether they come in grid mod or whether they come in the rate case. It seems important that we know and can tell the public, here's the bill.
Correct.
So I just want to clarify, you're looking for investments beyond this rate case?
Well, I assume in the rate case, you are proposing so much costs out to a certain period, and there's probably, you can't know beyond that point. Again, my knowledge of the rate case is limited and yours is more informed. So that's,
I know, I just think Mr. Gedko was asking for beyond the rate case, and that's why I'm trying to clarify.
No, I think just the rate case. I'm not asking you to do additional work. It's the data you've already assembled in the rate case. This should not require you to do anything but just go to documents and find stuff you already know.
Fair. Thank you.
Good. All right, well, this was a productive day, everybody. I think this is all fascinating, so I'm enjoying it, and I look forward to us coming back tomorrow. We'll start 9 o'clock. Commissioner Ellison will join us at 9:30. We'll figure it out with Mr. Warner and Commissioner Ellison. You should feel free to come back and ask more questions. We have the time for it.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone.